community. Thank you, and I think we have time for a few questions now.
Yes.
The plan says that most of the funding will come from new dollars. What are some possible funding sources?
Well, 17 million of the 25 million in the first year will come from new dollars, and we're looking at about 8 million to be reallocated. And the details on that will be provided on Tuesday when we present the budget. I'm going to be presenting the condition of the state address to a joint session of the legislature at 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. And even though the law does not require that we submit the budget until the end of January, we will be submitting the budget. And remember, last year we passed essentially a 2-year budget, including 2 years of funding for the school aid formula. But we are looking at supplemental appropriations and for this fiscal year 2013 as part of that budget message.
Will sales tax money be considered at all for this year or the next 2 years?
Well, the sales tax is part of the funding that goes to the general fund of Iowa. And so from the general fund, we are looking at adding additional $17 million in this coming year, fiscal year 2013, and reallocating about $8 million of the existing funding going to schools.
Governor, initially the projections for the cost were much higher than that, and I know that teachers' salaries has been taken off the table for this year, but what can you tell us about projections into the future?
Well, I think if we make a dramatic change in the way we compensate teachers, that would be a fairly significant and expensive provision. And Jason will be in the near future appointing a task force of leaders, including educators, to study this whole process and look at what we had in the blueprint and other ideas on how we can have a compensation system that will be helpful to attracting the highest quality teachers and rewarding good teachers, and making sure that we have a program that provides opportunities to mentor new teachers and help them improve their skills.
Would it be accurate to say that the things that are in this package today, many of them are not very costly?
Right.
And so
That's true.
give us
The
an idea
compensation, the change in the compensation system is, I think, clearly the most costly piece. And it's also one of the most complicated ones. And obviously, as we did the town hall meetings, there were a lot of questions raised about that. And we thought this is important enough that we want to get it right. We want to get more information and more expertise. And we recognize this is the first year of what we think is really a 10-year process to move Iowa to best in the nation in education.
So, but even without the teacher pay, is this 25 million just to start, or do you anticipate that being bigger over the next 10 years?
We anticipate that we're going to do more and do things differently in the future, including some reallocation and also additional new money that would be provided as we go forward.
Do you have a ballpark?
No, we don't. What we've done is put together the budget that is balanced and that's sustainable for the long term, and the budget we present will also have 5-year projections that shows that everything we're doing is affordable. And I happen to believe that the Iowa economy is stronger than that of the nation as a whole, and that because agriculture has had a good year, that we could well have, but we also are going to strictly adhere to the law that says we can only spend 99% of the December revenue estimate. And although revenues may exceed that, we will, and the legislature has to use that figure, or if the revenue in March were to be lower, they'd have to use the lower figure. But we said we're not going to do any of this notwithstanding language in the future, and we're going to adhere to the spending limitations. But the good news is, unlike last year when we inherited a financial mess and had a lot of one-time money been used for ongoing expenses, we're in a much better position. And we've got a 2-year budget for most things, and we just have to complete the part that didn't get done last session. So I'm very hopeful this can be accomplished and the additional resources for education can be provided. We also know that this is comprehensive, and there are aspects of this that I'm sure will be somewhat controversial, but we feel confident because of the thoughtful way in which we've approached it and because the effort we've made to build a broad-based consensus, that hopefully in the end, we can get something close to this approved. Now, I'm realistic to recognize that I don't think you ever pass anything without some amendments in the legislature. That's just the way the process goes, but we intend to work closely with them, and I want to compliment Jason Glass and Linda Fandel. They've put a tremendous amount of work into this. Jason's got a great team working with him at the Department of Ed, and he's done a great job of reaching out, as the Lieutenant Governor and I, to try to include educational leaders from across the state in this process. But we know throughout the session there will be a lot of work to be done on it.
There's another law that says you have to forward fund allowable growth. Are you going to adhere to that law? And when you present your budget, are you going to come with the FY14 number?
No. We're not going to do it. Well, first of all, the legislature has not done that in the past. You may recall when we came in last year, there had been no allowable growth set. We set allowable growth for 2 years. But what we're saying is, because we have this task force that's going to be looking at changing the way we compensate teachers, I think until we have their report and recommendations, it would not be wise to set funding for the subsequent year. The funding for next year, fiscal year 2013, for education is already set. Unlike last year, you may recall that wasn't resolved until the last day of June. This year, we're starting the session and people know what it's going to be for the coming year. But the year after that, fiscal year 2014, we believe it would be wise to wait until we have this task force recommendations on future funding and changing the compensation system.
The $8 million you spoke about, where exactly will that be reallocated from?
It'll come out of the overall, and you know, it's the biggest item in the state budget is money goes to K through 12 education, and we will spell out the specifics of that in the budget proposal that is presented to the legislature on Tuesday. So you will get the specifics of that on Tuesday.
Is it fair to say that most of that 25 million is in the assessment piece of this?
No, I would say most of it is in reading. We recognize it's going to take some resources to help. One of the big focuses of this is to make sure that every child can read before they leave third grade. And we want to put major emphasis on that, starting in preschool, in first, second, and third grade. And we know that it's going to take some additional resources to make sure that that program is effective. So I would say the assessment is going to cost some, and so is the state paying for students being able to take the college entrance exam as juniors and having the state pay for that. But the biggest item, I think, is clearly the focus on early childhood reading, starting, in preschool all the way through the first 3 grades.
What portions of the package do you think will have the most bipartisan support right now?
Well, I'm pretty optimistic that it's going to have broad-based support because we listened. And for instance, we heard from people, we think that we shouldn't just, the standards, the Iowa core shouldn't be just focused on these core courses, but we also, things like music and physical education and character education and these kinds of things, entrepreneurial, foreign languages, those are important. And we've included that. And so I believe that because of the approach that's been taken, because of the education summit, because of the town hall meetings and the feedback that we received there and the improvements we've made, I think that we've improved the package and that it has potential for broad-based bipartisan support.